Good afternoon. Welcome all to the National Online Project Presentation Competition in Chemistry organized by St. Joseph College for Women Alapi in association with Kerala Shastra Sahitya Parishad. This session will be chaired by Dr. Sunish K.S., Assistant Professor, CMS College, Kottayam. He has been awarded PhD by University of Saskatchewan, Canada and postdoc from Durham University, UK. His area of specialization includes organic and inorganic solar cells, organic light-emitting diodes, ultrafast spectroscopy, etc. He is a winner of many awards and recognitions such as UGC Dr. D.S. Kothari Research Fellowship, Adjunct Faculty at Advanced Molecular Materials Research Center, NG University, Reviewer of many journals of Royal Society of Chemistry and American Chemical Society. With this brief introduction, I invite you, sir, to chair this session. Thank you.
Thank you, Rishabas.
Students, let us start our presentation with PG projects. Before that, presenters please listen. Only 8 minutes is allowed for presentation and 2 minutes for discussion. After 8 minutes, you will hear a beep sound, which is the warning bell. Okay, moving on to the presentation. First, we start with CHPG001. Sri Lakshmi M. Menon is the presenter.
Okay, so good afternoon everyone. I'm Sri Lakshmi and I'm here to present my project on exploration of transition methods for nanocarbon dots as energy storage materials. So let me move on to my presentation. We know that the nanotechnology has emerged as one of the important technology in the 21st century. The present work focuses mainly on replacing the existing semiconductor quantum dots with the fluorescent nanomaterials, which has found wide range of applications. The semiconductor quantum dots usually contain heavy metals, which are generally toxic in nature, and thereby limiting their applications in the field of biomedicines. Therefore, the development of new non-toxic coated carbon dots is one of the current trend. Because of their low toxicity and good biocompatibility, they have found applications in bioimaging, biosensors, biomolecules, and drug delivery as well. Also, the outstanding electronic properties of the carbon-based quantum dots enter them with wide potentials in optronics, catalysis, and sensors. The carbon dots are nothing but the small carbon nanoparticles having size less than 10 nanometer in size. The synthesis of these carbon dots takes place either by the top-down method or the bottom-up method. In the top-down method, the bulk carbon materials are cut into small particles under harsh and strong conditions. In the bottom-up method, the small organic molecules and polymers may undergo dehydrations and carbonization to form the CNTs. It takes place under the mild and facile conditions. Some of the different synthetic strategies are given here. Here, the chemical ablation, electrochemical carbonization, laser ablations are some of the top-down methods, and the other two are some of the bottom-up methods. In the present work, we have used the microwave-assisted synthesis as it is facile, rapid, green, as well as cost-effective. The carbon dots, as I said, have many applications. The some of them are mentioned here. It includes photocatalysis, biosensors, drug delivery, chemical sensing, bioimaging, as well as in energy storage. The carbon quantum dots have been doped because doping is a pathway to control the properties of nanoscale materials. The doping in carbon dots is carried out to modify the properties of the carbon dots. In this work, we have used the nitrogen to dope our carbon dots because from the literature, we understand that the nitrogen doped carbon dots will enhance its fluorescence and also increases the quantum yield. Therefore, the doping is a widely used approach to tune the photoluminescent properties of these materials. The scope of the present work are given below. It is as follows. The development of facile, cost-effective and green synthetic method for the quantitative production of the carbon dots from the molecular precursors. The first road transition methods for doped nitrogen carbon dots by microwave-assisted synthesis. Also, we are learning the enhancement of optical and surface properties of the carbon dots through the heteroatom doping. The strong and tunable fluorescent emission properties of these nanomaterials are also being studied for their applications in the field of biomedicines, optronics, catalysis, as well as in sensing. The energy storage applications and their supercapacitor performances are also being studied in this present work. So let me move on to the experimental details. The synthetic strategy is very simple. It is as follows. The synthesis of nitrogen top carbon dots. We take urea and EDTA in a mortar and is grounded properly. 10 ml of distilled water is added into it and is transferred to a beaker. 10 ml of filtered fresh lemon juice is added into the mixture and is irradiated in a microwave oven at 500 watts for 10 minutes. Thus, we obtain a dark brown scales indicating the formation of EDTA functionalized carbon dots. These are again dissolved in 10 ml of distilled water and is centrifuged 3 times. The supernatant solution is our synthesized nitrogen-doped carbon dots. The second synthesis strategy is that of the transition metals for doped carbon dots. It takes place as the previous itself. The only difference is that we have used the first two transition metal as the precursors and follow the same procedure. This is what we obtain after the carbonization had taken place. So the strategy is given here. The precursors undergoes carbonization when irradiated on the microwave. Thus, we get the transition metal called of carbon dots, which under UV light shows the fluorescence. So the synthesized nanocarbon dots was analyzed using different analytical methods, and these are the following results that we have obtained. From the visual observation, we can see that the synthesized nanodots is having a light yellow to brown color under visible light, and when it is placed under the UV lamp, we get a blue fluorescence. The UV spectra is given here. If you clearly observe the UV spectra, we can see that a characteristic peak is observed at the 345 nanometer and also a dip at the 280 nanometer. If you clearly observe, we can see that the manganese and the nickel, the red and the light blue, shows a red shift, and while all the others shows a blue shift. This will give the information regarding the surface plasmon resonance. From the IR spectral analysis, we get the information regarding the functional group present in the nanodots. This is the data we have obtained. If we clearly observe this data, we can see that most of the compounds shows a peak at 3400 centimeter inverse range. It ensures the presence of OH bonds, that is, these hydroxyl bonds will ensure the solubility of carbon dots in water. If we see the co-doped transition metals, we can see a peak around 400 to 600 range. It indicates the presence of MO bond, the metal oxygen bond. It will support the incorporation of metal oxides on the surface of the carbon dots. The size and morphology was studied using the TEM. This is what we have obtained. Here we can see that the nitrogen-doped carbon dots is having a size less than 20 nanometer, while the co-doped carbon dots are showing a greater in size. Also, they differ for different transition metals. The fluorescence measurements is as follows. When we have given the excitation wavelength at 360 nanometer, we get a blue PL response at 450 nanometer. Also for the manganese, nickel, copper, as well as for zinc, we get the PL response at 450 nanometer. Here the iron co-dot shows a red shift while the cobalt shows a blue shift. The capacitance studies. From the capacitance studies, we know that the capacitance decreases with an increase in frequency. As the frequencies increases further, it becomes constant. Here we can see that on co-doping the carbon dots, the capacitance shows a 5-fold increase. Thus, we can say by preferential or selective doping of these carbon dots, we can enhance their supercapacitance. This is further confirmed by the dielectric loss factor associated with the capacitance studies. So, from here we can say the manganese, iron, and copper are promising candidates for enhancing the supercapacitance. The capacitance values that we have obtained is around 2.6 to 0.5 microfarad per centimeter square. This is in accordance with the literature. The previous studies shows us that the values of the capacitance of these carbon-based materials, especially graphene and carbon dots, lies in a range of 0.08 to 50 microfarad per centimeter square, and we have got the range between that. So these are the conclusions that we can make from our presentation or our work, that is highly luminescent first row transition elements of the manganese, iron, cobalt, nickel, copper, and zinc co-doped with nitrogen carbon dots were synthesized by a greener microwave-assisted pyrolysis pathway. The synthesized transition metal co-doped carbon dots emitted bright blue fluorescence, and these fluorescent transition metal nanocarbon dots exhibited supercapacitance properties, and thus they will be a promising material for its energy storage. The photoemissive properties of these doped and co-doped carbon dots can be fine-tuned by the preferential or the selective doping of the heteroatoms. Thus, we came to the conclusion that the variable supercapacitance properties exhibited by these co-doped nanocarbon dots will facilitate in the fabrications of energy storage material in the near future. With this, I am concluding my presentation. Thank you all.
Sunil sir, please.
Yeah. Srilakshmi, that was a good presentation. Am I
Thank you,
audible?
sir. Yes, yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and that was a good quantity of work that you have done there. Am I allowed to ask any questions,
So,
or is this discussion?
Sir,
Sir,
2
you can
minutes
ask questions.
discussion.
Okay. So my question is like the photoluminescence of nitrogen doped condensates is really high, but when you dope it with the first order transition metals, it's getting quenched. Do you know why?
excuse me, sir. It was
The photoluminescence, the luminescence, fluorescence of
okay.
nitrogen doped condensates is really high,
Mhm.
and it's a preferred or something that is advantageous, right? So but when you dope it with the first order transition metals, the fluorescence intensity is reduced.
Okay.
So do you know why?
I think it's because of the properties exhibited by these elements, transition elements.
Okay, so for luminescence applications, the greater the luminescence is, the better. So, like when you dope with the transition metals, it's getting reduced. The luminescence intensity is getting reduced. So it's not actually a desired property.
Okay.
Am I right? But
Yeah.
in terms of capacitance, that's a promising value.
Okay.
Okay, so your oral presentation was good, but my suggestion is like you need to reduce text on the presentation. Instead replace
Okay.
with the schematic figures. Like when you describe the synthesis part, you would have used, or you could have used schematic figures to better show that to better show what you have done there. So that's just
Yes,
one
sir.
suggestion. So and then like one more thing, like so these are fluorescence quantum dots, and they show promising capacitance values. So how do you correlate these two properties, the fluorescence and capacitance? Yeah.
Fluorescence and capacitance. So this we can say that the synthesis nanocarbon dots will be having a showing higher capacitance. Thus, we can say it can be used in the field of optronics or the energy devices, as well as in the fluorescence materials. That is, in the field of biomedicine also we are using this. So in the case we can track these materials without the application of any chemical dyes and all. So we can the fluorescence nature will show without any dye we can track these elements. So I think it will be a beneficial feature for this.
Yeah, from an application point of view.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, Dr. Sunish, may I ask a question?
Sure.
Sri Lakshmi,
Yes, sir.
good afternoon. I'm Anshul Shankar.
Good afternoon, sir.
I would like to ask you a question. So, who are there in your home? Your parents, your grandparents? Your grandparents
sir.
are with you?
My parents. Yes, my grandmother,
So, what is her name?
Radha.
My grandmother's name is Tankamma. She went to school only for 4 years, only up to 4th standard she went to school. So, I have a question
Okay.
for you. I want to tell my grandmother that I listened to a very nice presentation by Sri Lakshmi. She will ask me, what is it about? So what is it
What
about?
is it?
She will ask me, what is it about? What should I tell her? Please remember, she has studied only up to 4th standard.
Okay. We can tell her that in the present case we are using the electronic devices, right? She will be knowing about the electronic device, including anything.
No, she studied up to 4th standard.
But she's like, I think she will be familiar with the electronic devices like mobile phones and TV.
Do you think she would be a person who has studied up to 4th standard? പക്ഷെ അമ്മമ്മയ്ക്ക് വേറെ ഒരുപാട് കാര്യം അറിയാം കേട്ടോ. കൃഷി ചെയ്യാനറിയാം, പാല് കറക്കാനറിയാം, കൊച്ചുങ്ങളെ നോക്കാനറിയാം, 12 മക്കൾ ഉണ്ടായിരുന്നു. പക്ഷെ ഇലക്ട്രോണിക്സ് ഒന്നും അറിഞ്ഞില്ല. അപ്പൊ അവരുടെ എന്ത് പറയും?
ഓക്കെ, അവരോട് പറയാം ലൈക്ക് ഓക്കെ നമുക്ക് എനർജി നമുക്ക് നല്ല ഒരു പവർ ഉള്ള അല്ലെങ്കിൽ എന്തെങ്കിലും എനർജി ആയിട്ടുള്ള നമുക്ക് ലൈക്ക് ടി വിയിലോ മൊബൈൽ ഫോണിലൊക്കെ നമുക്ക് യൂസ് ചെയ്യാനായിട്ടുള്ള രീതിക്ക് നല്ലൊരു അങ്ങനത്തെ ഉള്ള എക്യുപ്മെന്റ്സ് നമുക്ക് ഉണ്ടാക്കിയെടുക്കാൻ സാധിക്കും, അല്ലെങ്കിൽ അതിൽ അപ്ലൈ ചെയ്യാൻ പറ്റുന്ന ഒന്നാണ് എന്ന് പറയാം.
Okay, good attempt. Sri Lakshmi, I asked you actually a very difficult question. it is not easy to explain what you do to a person like my grandmother.
Yes, sir.
അങ്ങനെ ചെയ്യാൻ ശ്രമിക്കുമ്പോൾ നിങ്ങൾക്ക് ഒരുപാട് വളർച്ചയുണ്ടാകും. ഞാൻ ഈ ചോദ്യം ഇത്രയും സമയമെടുത്ത് ചോദിക്കാൻ കാര്യം I have to leave early. So I pose this question before all the subsequent presenters. നിങ്ങൾക്ക് ഞാൻ ഐൻസ്റ്റീനെ കുറിച്ച് നേരത്തെ സംസാരിച്ചപ്പോൾ പറഞ്ഞിരുന്നു. ഐൻസ്റ്റീൻ പറയുന്നു, if you can explain your theory or your science to your grandmother, then you have understood it. അപ്പോൾ വിദ്യാഭ്യാസമൊന്നും ഇല്ലാത്ത സാധാരണ ഒരാളെ ഗാന്ധിജി അതിനെ പറഞ്ഞ ദരിദ്ര നാരായണൻ എന്നാണ്. ഒരു ദരിദ്ര നാരായണന്റെ അടുത്ത് നിങ്ങൾക്ക് കമ്മ്യൂണിക്കേറ്റ് ചെയ്യാൻ ഒക്കുമെങ്കിൽ, നിങ്ങൾ എന്ത് ചെയ്തു എന്ന് കമ്മ്യൂണിക്കേറ്റ് ചെയ്യാൻ ഒക്കുമെങ്കിൽ, then you suddenly realize what is science and how it relates to society. അപ്പോൾ അതിനൊരു ശ്രമം നടത്തണം. You made a good attempt. I congratulate you on good attempt. ഇന്ന് പറഞ്ഞ വിഷയത്തിനെ കുറിച്ച് സംസാരിക്കാനൊന്നും എനിക്ക് അറിഞ്ഞൂടാ. It's highly technical. So your chair has already commented. So I wish you all the best. I talk to you as a representative of all the other students who are yet to present. All the best.
Yes, sir.
After some years, you will be chairing, and many young people will be, those who are now ഇപ്പൊ ഓടിച്ച് വണ്ടിയൊക്കെ ഓടിച്ച് കളിച്ച് വീട്ടിൽ നടക്കുന്ന കുട്ടികളെ കുറച്ച് പ്രസന്റ് ചെയ്യാൻ വരുമ്പോൾ you will be chairing. And then we may not be very old people, and we may not be there here, but we are sure you will be there. You will be grown.
Thank you very much, sir.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Sri Lakshmi. Moving on to the next presentation. Presenter Swati PN. Register number CHPG002. Swati, please.
Okay, so thank you everyone, especially St. Joseph College for Women and Kerala Shastra Sahitya Parishad and all the people. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, one and all present here. My name is Venkatesh Krishna. I am doing my PG work in Government Arts College, Coimbatore. I am here to present my project work regarding the lithium-ion conductivity of tri-block polymer electrolytes. Okay, this is a quite complicated topic. Okay, let me make it simple. We use the battery in every devices. It has a wide range of application that we have come across. Now, day by day, the need for the batteries are increasing. Since new materials has to be discovered as soon as possible to overcome this. Like two sides of the same coin. There is a good and bad. Here also thanking God. Just have a look at this. When the boy is using the phone, it suddenly gets exploded. Thank God he has just survived. So that's the danger it's behind it. Here the major concern in here it is the liquid electrolyte used in the batteries, which are highly reactive when exposed to air. They may also cause a short circuit. Okay. During discharging and charging mechanism, the ions from the anode to cathode move via the polymer membrane, which is non-conductive, and the electrolyte used is a liquid one. So liquid electrolytes is paying a price for that explosion at all. So several research were going on in this topic. Okay, here our project work is based on the solid polymer electrolytes, which will be going to be used in the solid state batteries. Since pure polymer is not non-conductive in nature, it is doped with the lithium salt in order to increase the ionic conductivity. So when the ionic conductivity increases, it is well suited for the battery energy storing devices. Okay, here the materials I have chosen is the PVDCl, shortly known as the tri-block copolymer. Here the various blocks present in the polymers are connected covalently. The block they contributes the block copolymer. The micro separation present in these blocks copolymer provides the mechanical strength and greater ionic conductivity. The nitrile group present here provides the greater ionic mechanical strength for the membrane. The chlorine and the rest of this has provided. One second. Sorry for the interruption. Okay. here the ionic membrane is used. The lithium perchloride is the salt I have chosen to dot the material. Okay. Here we are using the solution casting technique to prepare the polymer electrolytes. We have used the THF as the solvent and then the PVDCl as the polymer membrane. Since the pure polymer membrane is non-conductive, we dope them with the lithium salt. We prepare by dissolving the 20 ml PVDCl sample inside it 20 ml of the tetrahydrofuran as the solvent. It is the high, it evaporates in the room temperature, so tightly it is closed. So, and after stirring the lithium salt in a separate beaker for 10 minutes or 1 hour, it is transferred into the beaker. Now let's go to here. The ionic conductivity is measured by the formula sigma is equal to thickness, where the average of the thickness polymer thin film membrane is taken. A represents the area of contact area between the polymer and the electrode. RB represents the bulk resistance of polymer electrolytes. Okay. Here the cold plot is well known in the impedance analysis technique. When for comparing with the pure polymer, due to its capacitive nature, the polarization effect plays a major role. So this polymer in the figure 4 is non-conductive, and then while doping it with the lithium salts, the capacitive nature of the membrane disappears and it gets into a resistive nature. So when resistance increases, it is taken from the x-axis. The resistance is used to calculate the ionic conductivity. Here the pure polymer is of the order 10 power minus 8, which is merely an insulative nature. As the salt is increased, the ionic conductivity of the membrane also increased. The highest conductivity is found to be of the order 4.8 into 10 to the power minus 3. Okay, here our results are here. The XRD results shows that the amorphous nature of the polymer is increased on an increase in the solvent of the and increasing the solvent. The pure polymer is semi-crystalline in nature, while the conducting polymer is amorphous in nature. Here the results are shown. The values are shown here. And from the FTIR analysis, we can see that this is the characteristics peak for the water peak. It's also called a OH stretching peak. On increasing the doping material, lithium perchlorate salt, the moisture of the membrane disappears and it becomes suitable for the battery membrane, and also the complex formation between the carbonyl group and the salt has been confirmed by here is shown in the figure. The carbonyl stretching frequency is disappeared, so which means that there is a complex is formed between the polymer and the salt. Here we have taken the coin cell crimping machine to fabricate our battery. Our batteries consist of cathode lithium ion phosphate, which is well known for around the world, which is used in commercial batteries. It is coated over an aluminum current collector, and the membrane taken as the highest conductivity as the separator as well as the electrolyte. No liquid electrolytes are used. The graphite is used as the anode, which is coated on the copper current collector. The battery is mounted on a battery holder and charged for 2 hours. Several cycles were measured, and the conclusion: the lithium ion conductivity of the pure polymer and the doped materials were studied. The highest conductivity is found to be of the order 4.8 into 10 power minus 3, which is increased by the order 5 from the pure membrane. The complex of these is confirmed by the FTI analysis, and the rechargeable batteries of 3.14 volt is similar to that of the lithium ion battery. My sincere thanks to Dr. Selvasekara Pandian, Material Research Center, Coimbatore, for supporting me to do this work. And thank you all.
Hello, Venkatesh.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon. It was really good work actually, and I have
Thank
been
you, sir.
following some of my colleagues' works on lithium ion battery recently. Uh,
Okay, sir.
yeah, I have very fundamental, basic, curious question.
Okay, sir.
When you tried the triblock polymer, it's a
Yes, sir.
conjugated polymer, right?
Yes, sir.
So why did you select a conjugated polymer instead of a,
Sir,
saturated backbone polymer?
it is very simple, sir. A single monomer membrane of a polymer will not provide the mechanical strength and the good ionic conductivity. You can see here the nitrile group, CN group, it's called as acrylonitrile, which provides the mechanical stability. And the movement of ions were determined by the vinylidene chloride and the methyl methacrylate group, especially the carbonyl group present here, which forms the complex, which like a hopping mechanism, it allows the ions to move through the cathode and anode, sir.
Okay, okay. Oh, I thought this one was a conjugated polymer. My bad. Okay.
It is a polymer.
Okay. Okay. So, okay. So, is it a reasonable capacitance value that you have got from the capacitance measurements?
So we didn't measure the capacitance. We have measured the output voltage, sir.
Oh, sorry, output voltage. Yeah.
Yes, sir. We were able to get a 3.14. Here are the images I have shown here. You can zoom in. 3.14 was the capacity output volt we have measured, sir. But due to some issues, the voltage is not stabilizing. It suddenly drops to 2.7 something, and then there it discharges.
With the time, is it measured as a function of time?
Yes, sir. We don't
Okay.
have the instrument, sir. We are just doing in a manual way, by
Okay.
charging and
So,
discharging by observing by our
can you
eyes.
suggest why? Like, what could be the possible reason?
Sir, our possible reason is that we are new to coating this cathode and the anode, but our membrane is proven that it is conducting. So
Okay.
we are not that much bothered about the cathode and the anode material, sir.
Okay. Okay. So, have you tried? Is it some problem with the coating
Yes, sir.
method?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So,
We
have you
have
tried any other
no.
method?
We are just working, sir. Soon
Okay.
now we have changed the anode material.
Okay.
We used charcoal, sir. It is more
Instead of graphite.
it's more stable than the graphite, but we are still trying different materials and methods to
Graphene is
make.
a very good material.
Yes, it's bit costly. Already we have purchased lithium ion phosphate. It is about 25 grams. It's 15,000
Okay.
something,
Okay.
sir.
Good.
So we
Okay.
are
Venkatesh, the work is really good.
working.
And you have described almost all the results and explained the results very well. The thing is like I wish that you would have been a little bit more energetic in presenting the topic, you
Yes,
know.
sir. Suddenly I
So
just got wrong button. I have pressed.
I know that's fine.
Okay,
Like
okay,
the tone that you
okay,
used to present, because
okay,
it's very important to engage the audience, right? Especially when you're
okay,
presenting
sir.
in an online platform. So
Okay,
you
sir.
should be more kind of energized
And
when you're
it's
presenting.
the first time I am talking in English,
Oh,
sir.
if you're a first timer, then this is
Okay,
good, pretty good enough. Okay,
okay.
so okay.
Soon I will learn to come up with more frequency.
Okay, okay, good. So, uh, okay, that's all about my questions. And it looks like you have a good stint, or you have got a good, attitude towards research. So
Yes, sir.
you should go for
We will
PhD.
come out with,
Doing
yes,
PhD.
sir. I am trying, sir. Even in the COVID time, I used to go to the lab.
Okay,
We
okay,
are
good.
trying daily, sir.
Okay, good. Okay, okay.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Venkatesh.
Thank you, sir.
Any other questions from audience? Okay, so if that's so, we can wind up here your presentation.
Thank you,
And
sir.
thank you very much. Okay.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Venkatesh.
Thank you,
Moving
ma'am.
to the next presentation, presenter Swati PN, CHPG002.
Good afternoon. Today I am going to present a topic, nitrogen-rich zinc ammonia with dual functional imidazole linker and active catalyst for carbon dioxide conversion. MOF, metal organic framework, a porous crystalline organic inorganic hybrid compound in which metal ions and organic multidentate ligands are linked together by coordinate bonds. They exhibit high surface areas with tunable porosity, pore size, and shape pore size selectivity. They find applications in adsorption, catalysis, gas separation, sensing, drug delivery, etc. Conventional porous catalysts such as zeolite, activated carbon, etc. can be replaced by MOF because of its high surface area and substrate size dependent catalytic activity. And also, mild synthetic conditions is needed for MOF synthesis. And here, our MOF incorporates merits of homogeneous and heterogeneous catalysts, including efficiency and reusability. This figure represents some examples of MOF. Why MOF for carbon dioxide fixation? As I already mentioned that MOF have high surface area, which is useful in efficient catalysis and solvent-free carbon dioxide in conversion. It is efficient, reusable, environment friendly, and it is it can be replaced over the conventional carbon dioxide scrubbers. NGMOF 75, AUM CM1 are examples of MOF having good carbon dioxide absorption efficiency. And this figure represents an example of carbon dioxide absorption by MOF. Our aim of research is to synthesize a novel MOF under ambient conditions with enriched nitrogen content and investigation of its structural catalytic properties through a carbon dioxide epoxide cycloaddition. Approach. First is the synthesis of our MOF at room temperature by precipitation method. For this we use zinc nitrate hexahydrate, benzene tricarboxylic acid, 2-methyl imidazole that gives a Lewis acid-based bifunctional metal organic framework, that is ITH1. This figure represents the synthesis of our MOF. Next is catalysis, that is catalyze the cycloaddition of carbon dioxide with propylene oxide under solvent and co-catalyst-free conditions at moderate temperature. Let us move on to results and discussion. The first picture represents the FT-SEM image of ITH1. Pillared crystal formation was obtained with average sizes of rows where 2 to 3 millimeter length and 1 to 1.5 millimeter width. From the single crystal XRD, it is observed that ITH1 is made up of infinite sheets of zinc 2 plus ion connected via BTC3- anion with 2-methyl imidazole unit. The asymmetric unit of ITH1 consists of two crystallographically distinct zinc 2 plus ions. Both of the zinc 2 plus ions with distorted tetrahedral geometry via coordinating with the carboxylate atoms of 2 BTC and the tertiary nitrogen atoms of 2 different 2-methyl imidazole units. The hexamer unit consists of 6 zinc centers, that is 2 zinc 1 which is represented as red and 4 zinc 2 which is represented as blue. There forms a hydrogen bonding between NH of 2-methyl imidazole attached to zinc 2 of sheet 1 and the carbonyl oxygen of sheet 2. From the crystal data, it is found that imidazole units attached to zinc 1 are not involved in hydrogen bonds, ensuring the existence of Lewis-based nitrogen atoms. Hence, ITH1 framework provides a promising example of MOF, wherein half of the linker imidazole moieties are utilized for providing structural integrity via engaging in hydrogen bonding, and while other half act as functional sites for task-specific purposes. From the PXRD pattern, it also ensures the exactness of structure that I explained before. From the FTIF spectrum, the broad band at 3440 cm inverse corresponding to NH spread, which indicates the coordination of mono-substituted imidazole unit, and the absence of peak at 1720 cm inverse, it confirms the complete deprotonation of BTC linkers. And from the TGA curve, it is understood that our MOF ITH1 is thermally stable, which is due to hydrogen bond. And let us move on to catalysis study. Here, using propylene oxide as substrate, we are carrying out the catalysis with and without co-catalyst to yield propylene carbonate. With our catalyst ITH1, it renders 99% conversion of propylene carbonate, propylene oxide with excellent selectivity towards propylene carbonate. We also carried out the reaction with precursor materials of ITH1, which shows only negligible conversion, that is observed in this table. And from this, we can understood that at temperatures 120 degrees Celsius, 99% conversion was occurred, and 6 bar pressure, 94% propylene oxide conversion was occurred and retained. 24 hours and 0.5 mole percentage of catalyst was found most suitable for efficient transformation. The ability of ITH1 to catalyze carbon dioxide conversion was investigated at room temperature with the help of coke catalyst tetrabutyl ammonium bromide. Neither ITH1 nor TBAB alone produced any appreciable PO conversion in room temperature. However, binary system of ITH1 TBAB manifested an excellent conversion of 97% of propylene oxide with 99% of PC selectivity at room temperature 1 bar carbon dioxide pressure in 48 hours. For providing theoretical evidences, computational studies are also done. From this computational diagram, DFT calculation, the relative energy of ITH1 TBAB catalyst is taken as 0 as the starting point, which is indicated as the orange line. And the activation energy needed for this first transition state is 23.2. And the blue line indicates the co-catalyst TBAB alone, which needs 42.3 activation energy, which is almost double. Thus, from this diagram, we can observe that the Lewis acid sink and NH group on the 2-methyl imidazole of ITH1 engaged into synergistic play with bromide ion of the co-catalyst, which resulted in high yield of propylene carbonate. From the results and catalytic studies, we could conclude that there are two types of imidazole moieties present on the framework. Half of them provide structural integrity to the framework via engaging in hydrogen bonding, and while other half exists as free imidazole furnishing catalytic ability. And our ITH1 manifested excellent conversion of propylene oxide to propylene carbonate via carbon dioxide addition without the aid of co-catalyst or solvent, and displayed remarkable reusability. In the present scenario of global warming, conversion of carbon dioxide into value-added chemicals by MRs is a reliable way toward a sustainable low-carbon system. These are some references used. Thank you.
Okay, Swati, that was a good presentation. But I'm not sure. I'm not really haven't got the idea how this MOF catalyzes the reaction. What is the mechanism? What is the exact mechanism?
Okay, that is there is in MOF, it consists of a Lewis base and Lewis acid. The Lewis base
Yeah.
is the free nitrogen and Lewis acid is the present. This thing interfere with the CO bond in the carbon dioxide, and it reduces the activation energy. While using TBAB co-catalyst, the bromide ion in the TBAB, it also interferes in this bond, weakened bond, and also decreases the activation energy. Thus, the reaction is proceeded in room temperature.
Okay. Okay, that's good. Okay. Like you have put a good presentation, and the work has we have put really good content of work there. But the thing is, when you present the especially the synthetic parts, and especially as well as you have done the XRD, you have taken the XRD measurements, right?
Yes.
So it would have been nice if you have presented the X-ray crystallography data as well as the figure, the crystallographic, the crystal structure along with the presentation. It would be good, more appealing to the audience if you show those crystal structures. Okay, and okay, so that is a good presentation. And again, one more question I would like to ask: what is the exact role of this imidazole in preserving the structural integrity?
Sir, excuse me, I can't hear.
What is the exact role of the imidazole units in preserving the structural integrity of the MOF?
Because
How does
they
the
are
imidazole,
independent.
you said like the imidazole units preserve the structural integrity. So how does it?
വെച്ചിട്ട്
Yeah,
കാരണം കേൾക്കാൻ വയ്യ.
Can I speak?
sure,
Hello? Sir,
sure. Yeah, go ahead.
because half of the imidazole moieties are interfering in, it is participating in intermolecular hydrogen bonding.
Okay.
This hydrogen bonding provides the structural integrity framework.
Okay. The hydrogen bonding provides the structural integrity. Okay. Good. Okay. So that is good. And the there are a lot of works coming out in MOF, right? There are a lot of MOFs reporting today, every day for catalytic conversions, right? So if you compare the catalytic conversion activity of or efficiency of your MOF with all the MOFs reported, whatever, but you might have gone through some literature review, right? So when you compare the efficiency of MOFs, how do you rate your or rank your MOF in terms of efficiency, catalytic conversion efficiency?
Here, our MOF and ambient conditions also, it is giving 99% of conversion. And with the help of this coke catalyst tetrabutyl ammonium bromide, it gives conversion, 99% conversion at room temperature. It is considered as an efficient catalyst to be showing an catalytic activity in room temperature.
Okay, so can you think of this one as being a potential candidate in future applications, like it converts almost with an efficiency of or yield of 99%. Okay, the catalytic conversion efficiency is 99%. So can you think of your MOF as a product in future applications?
Yes,
So
because one thing, our MOF is prepared in room temperature, and it is one of the importance of that MOF. And it gives also 99% conversion and converting carbon dioxide into value-added chemicals. So it is, and our catalyst is reusable also.
Okay, so it can be used in the industrial applications. Okay, good. Thank you.
Next presenter, Gopidas.
So, Ms. Nisha, this was PG002, right? Soumya, sorry, Swati Nair.
Yes, sir. For the PN.
Swati PN. Okay.
Yeah. Ramya, Miss, please proceed.
Moving on to the next presentation. Presenter Lakshmi Priya R. CHPG005.
Warmful and cheerful good afternoon to my respected professors and my dear friends. Let me introduce myself. I am Shivpriya from Milnagar. Next slide, please, ma'am. Today's my topic is the phytochemical screening and antimicrobial activity of leaf, seed and sprouted seed extract in various solvents of the Trichoderma graecum, a comparative study. Next slide, please, ma'am. The introduction. The natural products are the major source of the new drugs, and the herbal plants are rich in the pharmacologically active compounds, and the active compounds play a role as secondary metabolites. And the antimicrobial activity of the plant extract of plants and the different compounds which include the aldehyde and the phenolic compounds. Next slide, please, ma'am. Nowadays, the nosocomial infection and the infectious disease, it is increases. The development of the drug residence in bacterial pathogens. To overcome this problem, many medicinal plants and their components are used as a natural product. The aim of the present work is to screen the phytochemical studies and the antibacterial activity of leaf seed and the sprouted seed of Trichoderma in different solvents. Next slide, please, ma'am. I have choose the Phenicus plant. It is common. It is a biological name. It's the Trichoderma conumbricum. This the family is the Fabaceae. It is used in the antibacterial and antibiotic and the anticatholic. Let's try this one. This is the common reason. The leaf is used in the antibacterial and antifungal properties. And the seed is the diabetic and digestive, and the tuberculosis and the skin infection. And the sprouted seed is used in the anti-diabetic, the increase in the insulin and the anti-cataract. Next slide, please, ma'am. The scope of the work. The present study focus on the comparison of the phytochemical analysis and the antimicrobial activity of the Trichoderma conumbricum, the seed, leaf, and the sprouted seed extract in different solvents. And the identification of phytochemicals in the seed, leaf, and the sprouted seed of Trichoderma conumbricum was carried out using the solvent like ethanol, acetone, ethyl acetate, chloroform, and distilled water extract. And then the antimicrobial activity in the Trichoderma conumbricum, leaf seed, and sprouted seed extract. Next slide, please, ma'am. The agenda, first one, the collection of plant materials and the preparation of extract and the phytochemical screening test and the antimicrobial activity, and then conclusion. Next slide, please, ma'am. The collection of plant material. The leaf and the seed of the plant were collected from local area. After the plant collection, they have to be cleaned. Under the main process of the drying is to remove the water. After completed drying of the plant, they have to be powdered well for further analysis. Next slide, please, ma'am. The preparation of extract. First, I have taken the 2 gram of the powder sprout seed and leaf powder. I have taken here 50 ml beaker and then added 20 ml of the different solvent and then stirred for the 30 minutes. And then the 24 stable, and then they filter using the Watman paper number 1. And then you store at 4 degrees Celsius refrigerator. Next slide, please, ma'am. This is the preparation of extract. I have taken a seed on the all powders and then using the solvent and the sugar and the filter paper. I have getting the different solvent in the NM bottle. I have used. The phytochemicals. The plant have the capacity to produce a large number of organic chemicals called phytochemicals. Next slide, please, ma'am. The phytochemical screening test. The phytochemicals examination were carried out for all the extracts to evaluate the presence of different phytochemicals. This is the secondary metabolites like tannin, flavonoids, steroids, etc. Next slide, please, ma'am. I have the standard phytochemical screening test. Example of the alkali using the Wagner test. This I have taken a 1 ml leaf extract and have added the 1 ml Wagner reagent. The Wagner reagent like dilute iodine solution, and I have a reddish brown precipitate. It is the following all the phytochemicals I have used the standard procedure. Next slide, please, ma'am. It also is all the procedures carried out the standard procedure, ma'am. The antimicrobial activity. The antibacterial activity of Trichoderma conumbricum. The natural substance and the chemical which are able to inhibit the growth of the microorganisms like bacteria are called antimicrobial agents. This plant, the phenolic, have the antibacterial, antifungal, and anti-diabetic, and etc. This properties are getting. Next slide, please, ma'am. The antibacterial activity. The vitro antibacterial activity of extract using the Hart division method by measuring the diameter of inhibition zones or by plant extract against different bacteria like gram positive and gram negative. Next slide, please, ma'am. Type of bacteria. It is the gram negative bacteria and one is the gram negative bacteria. First one, the gram positive bacteria. It is here retain the dark blue or violet color, the crystal violet iodine complex. It is here gram positive bacteria. Example, the Streptococcus pyogenes. And then the gram negative bacteria. It is do not retain the color of the crystal violet coding. It's example of the E. coli. Next slide, please, ma'am. The bacteria. First one is Streptococcus. It is a Streptococcus. The Streptococcus like a gram positive. It is a round shape and grow in shape. It is causes the skin infection and the wound infection pneumonia. The E. coli is a gram-negative and straight rod shape. This causes the urinary tract infection diarrhea. The procedure, the antibacterial assay of extract. I have choose the AHA well diffusion method. The 20 ml of amplicin is sterile petri and they have the 1 ml of the Streptococcus aureus organism, and then my yeast extract and seed and the sprouted seed is the 0.2 milligram ml is used, and then the 1 hour is in a incubator, and it has the zone of inhibition is calculated. Next slide, please, ma'am. Second discussion. Next is the phytochemical screening test. Next, ma'am. The result of phytochemical analysis of the Trichoderma vacum leaf and extract is containing a different phytochemical like alkali, carbohydrate, phenolic glycoside, and flavonoid, saponin, protein, steroid, and tannin. Next slide, please, ma'am. First one, the leaf extract. The phytochemical screening, it is there the ethyl acetate solvent in the leaf is the alkali, saponin, and the sugar is absent. And then the ethanol solvent, the saponin is absent. The water extract, the steroid and the sugar and the tannin are absent. Next slide, please, ma'am. The seed extract in here, ethanol solvent, the saponin are absent. And then the water solvent used to the seed extract is absent in the tannin. Next slide, please, ma'am. The sprouted seed is the water solvent is absent in the phenol and the steroid, and then the acetone is solvent, the alkali and the phenol, flavonoids and the flavonoids is absent. Then next, gram-negative bacteria. Next, ma'am. The grass, ma'am. The gram, next, ma'am. Oh, chart, ma'am. The antibacterial activity is getting the water solvent used in the gram-negative bacteria is low, and then the ethyl acetate in the ethyl acetate used in the gram-negative bacteria is bacteria zone of inhibition is low. Next slide, ma'am. The gram-positive bacteria in Streptococcus aureus used, and then is the chloroform in the leaf extract is very low zone of inhibition, ma'am. Next slide, ma'am. Conclusion. The comparison study of the phytochemical studies, the microbial activity of Trichoderma vacum leaf and seed. Next slide, ma'am. The antibacterial activity in the leaf extract in a leaf is all the solvent in the leaf extract is the gram-positive and the gram-negative bacteria is easily the zone of inhibition is very well. But in the seed extract and sprouted extract, in compared to the leaf extract, is very best. Next slide, ma'am. Next, ma'am. Thank you so much. Very much for listening. Are you there? Any question, ma'am?
Lakshmi Priya,
Yes, sir.
natural product extraction and its application medicine. The medical field is always fascinating. Like there are a lot of people working on this field right now in the world, especially in India, and most of the Asian institutes as well. So but it's mostly a biotechnology or biochemistry work. So we are mostly chemistry people. So let me ask you, what is the exact chemical reason that is responsible for this biochemical activity of the natural products you have synthesized or extracted? What is the exact mechanism? Like how does it inhibit the bacterial growth, and how does it exhibit antimicrobial properties from a chemical point of view?
The alkaloid in the some of the Trichoderma leaf, the Trichoderma vacum, the leaf is present in the alkaloids, and the alkaloid is present in the alkaloid special alkaloids, trichoderma, and some of the alkaloids are easily killed the bacteria.
Okay, so but do you have any evidence for claiming that particular point, like the alkaloids kill the bacteria? Any other evidences? We know that alkaloids kills the bacteria, but do you have any evidences that the alkaloids in your extract kill the bacteria?
Yes, sir. And My PPT, I have used uh, I don't know.
Okay, you have seen some antibacterial activities for sure from the chart. I have seen that one as well. But my question is, do you have any confirmatory tests that are asserting you that the antiloids specifically kill the bacteria, or is it something else?
It's like it's a zone inhibition is measured as it is my least extent is how how much is still the bacteria, sir.
Okay, I was asking because it's quite intriguing and fascinating. The Ayurvedic medicines, that are derived from plants actually cure some diseases. But the one of the most often neglected side of this one is that people don't try to see what kind of chemicals actually do this, and what kind of what kind of mechanisms actually lead to this antibacterial, antimicrobial properties. It's often neglected, so that's why I was asking. Okay.
Okay.
And about how using different solvents. Some of the extract in some of the solvents you show some inhibition property. Some others show different property. Do you know? Do you have any kind of justification as to why we see this effect? On your conclusion slide, I have seen that the extract in some solvents show some different property, whereas the extract in some other solvents show some other different property.
Yes, sir.
Why is it so?
No, water. The water containing the leaf extract, the sprouted seed and seed extract is very low zone of inhibition in the bacteria, sir.
Is it the solubility of the extract in the solvents or something else?
Yes, sir. The water solvent used in the extract, it is easily easily decays. So it is not on other solvents. The ethanol, chloroform, acetone is a very easily kill the zone bacteria, sir.
Okay. Okay. I have one more suggestion, for Sri Lakshmi. Sorry, Lakshmi Priya. Uh, the timing of the presentation was just 8 minutes, and the crux of your presentation was on presenting the antibacterial properties. So, but you quite spend a little bit more time on the introduction section. That's you sacrificed a little bit time there. So that's how you got ended up in not able to present the last parts. You were in a hurry at the end. So you need to try a bit more on time management next time when you're doing presentations. Okay. But it was a
Okay, sir.
attempt, though. Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, sir. Thanks, sir.
Thank you, Lakshmi Priya. Next presenter, Aishwarya Shashidharan. Aishwarya Shashidharan,
What is the number? Yeah.
CHPG 006.
Okay. Good afternoon to all. Myself Aishwarya Shashidharan. I did my postgraduate from St. Joseph College, Devagiri, Calicut, and my project topic is biodegradable polymers from natural resources, isolation and characterization. First of all, introduction includes what is starch. Starch is white tasteless powder in purified form, and its chemical formula is N times 6H10O5, and it built out of glucose units joined in alpha 1,4 linkages, and it consists of linear helical amylose and branched amylopectin molecules. The main uses of starch includes to make glue-based and biobatteries, and it's and also starch is used as biomaterial in food, health, textile, chemical, and engineering sector. This is the structure of amylose and amylopectin molecule, which is combined to form the starch polymer. Next is bioplastics, which plays a vital role in industries and household appliances. And usually, manufacture of plastic bags causes emission of carbon, and it causes environmental problems. So, in order to reduce these environmental problems, we can use polymer materials from natural carbon compounds, so that this kind of environmental problems can be reduced. The main applications of bioplastics polymers includes there are mainly three sectors. Bioplastics are mainly applied in food industry and in medical field and in agriculture. First of all, in food industry, bioplastics are used as in food packaging and in edible films. So that in order to make the food fresh and to make it pure and make it to biodegradable. Next, in medical field, they are applied in four main applications are there. For bioplastic materials, as for it is used as medical polymer material and in bone tissue engineering and in drug delivery, and finally in 3D structure of starch-based hydrogens. In order to make it for this, when these applications are done, in medical field it is more biocompatible and it's easily degradable in the site of application. Next, in agriculture sector, covering bioplastics are used in order to cover the greenhouse, mulch filling, and in and to release materials, fertilize control release materials, and to enhance mechanical properties and solvent or gas resistance. And in order and this bioplastic polymers are mixed with nanograde additives such as titanium dioxide layer silicates in order to form nanocomposites. The main objectives of the project work includes synthesis of bioplastic from potato and cassava starch, green synthesis of iron oxide nanoparticles using potato and cassava starch, preparation of starch or iron oxide filling. Next is experimental part. First part is preparation of potato cassava starch. And the materials include potato cassava, grater, tea strainer, pestle mortar, water, meshing cylinder. The method I follow is scrub the potatoes or cassava, clean it and peel and grate using straight grater. Pour the liquid off through tea strainer, add little water and grind and strain. Leave the mixture to settle, decant the water, leaving starch behind, and repeat several times by adding water. Finally, dry and collect the starch powder. This is the prepared potato and starch and cassava starch. The next part of the last part of the experiment is synthesis of inoxide nanoparticles using potato or cassava starch. The materials include potato or cassava starch, heptahydrated ferrous sulfate, water, thermistor, electric furnace for calcination. The method follows is take potato or cassava starch, water, and heptahydrated ferrous sulfate in the ratio 1:1:4. Stir well. Keep on thermistor at 70 degrees for 1 hour. Left at room temperature, then filter and wash it with double CC water. Dry it oven at 100 degrees Celsius. We get the dal paste obtained at heated at 700 degrees Celsius in air oven for 4 to 6 hours. And this is treated with 37% concentrate HCl for 1 hour at room temperature. Finally, dried and collect the final product. This is the different steps or different phases of experiment. Then results and discussion. Finally, first of all, FTIR spectroscopy of potato starch. Here we can see several peaks. The first peak or the characteristic peak of 3,328 centimeter inverse and 1,020 centimeter inverse depicts that oil stretching and COC skeletal vibration of stars. Then next is 2,916 centimeter inverse peak depicts that CH stretching of stars. The characteristic peak on at 1,420 and 1,358 reveals the angular deformation of CH. Finally, 1,647 centimeter inverse peak depicts the tightly bound water present in stars. Okay, then FTIR spectroscopy of cassava stars. This also having several characteristic peak. First is 3,321 centimeter inverse and 2,930 centimeter inverse depicts that all and CS stretching respectively, and at 1,161 centimeter inverse depicts the coupling mode of CO and CC stretching, and the peak at 1,016 centimeter inverse depicts the COH bending mode. Finally, the 1,358 centimeter inverse CH depicts the CH2 bending. The semi-analysis of potato starch is shown here. It's in the figure, we can see the kernels of potato starch are regular in shape and having diameter 10 micrometer. And in cassava starch, it's irregular in shape, and it's also having diameter in the range, size of diameter in the range 10 micrometer. This is XRD analysis of potato starch, having high intensity sharp peak at 16.9, and several peaks are also seen. Next is XRD analysis of cassava starch, having broad and high intensity peak at almost 18, 2 theta equal to 18. Then next is conclusion part. Reveals that FTIR results confirm that starches are synthesized successfully. XRD determination suggests that synthesized starches are ordered crystalline structure, and also it gives the microscopic properties, and some images reveals the size and shape of kernels of starches. From this data, we synthesize the iron oxide nanoparticles. Thank you, and I'd like to thank St. Joseph College for Women and Kerala Shastra for giving me this opportunity to present my seminar, my projects. Thank you.
Okay, Aishwarya Shashidharan.
Okay,
Yeah.
Okay.
Aishwarya, can you hear me?
Yes, sir, I am audible.
Okay. So it's fascinating to see this work where people try to blend, biomaterials or organic materials with the inorganic materials, such as iron oxide. But let me ask you one thing: what was the main objective or objectives of your project research at your presentation? Was it preparing the starch, potato starch, and cassava starch, or was it preparing the iron oxide starch?
Preparing iron oxide nanoparticles, but I cannot stress on the I know that part because due to this issues, coronavirus issues, we cannot stress on that part.
Were you not able to further study the proceed the studies? Is that what you're saying? Like due to corona?
Yeah.
Okay, 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 okay. So,
We were planning to study the antimicrobial activity of iron oxide nanoparticles, but we can't do it.
okay, 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 okay. That's okay. Like you have shown the same image of the potato and cassava kernel, right?
Yeah.
So, what is the size of that particles that you see?
Diameter in the range 10 micrometer.
10 micrometers. Okay. Okay. So, like, how does this starch from potato cassava influence the properties of iron oxide nanoparticles? Or, in other words, my question
Can I
is,
get a template for the synthesis?
okay. Okay, but iron oxide nanoparticles can be synthesized in different methods, even without this starch, right?
Yeah.
So, what kind of property would you be expecting from this, temperature synthesis of iron oxide nanoparticles? So, what kind of properties, different properties, would you be expecting? Or how does this templating process, as you have said, the templating process is going to affect the properties of iron oxide nanoparticles? So how does it affect? How do you expect this one to affect the properties of iron oxide nanoparticles?
So I don't know.
Okay. Okay. So why did you heat the mixture at a high temperature, 700 degrees, right, to make the nanoparticles? Why do you heat at a high temperature? Because usually people try to heat at maximum to 300, 350 degrees, right? So, but as I have seen in your slides, you have heated the mixture at 700 degrees, right? So it's a quite high temperature, really high temperature. So why did you heat the mixture at high temperature, such a high temperature? Why didn't you try some lower temperatures like 200 or 300?
I think in order to remove the starch content in the
To carbonize the materials, but that can be achieved by heating at lower temperatures, below 400 degrees. But why 700 degrees? It's because I was surprised to see that it is high temperature. There are a lot of chemistries that happens at such a high temperature. But why did you choose 700 degrees Celsius?
I thought that it is to burn the starch material, starch thing.
Okay. Can I ask one more question?
Okay, sir.
So, how do we confirm that it's a nanoparticle?
Within the experiment work,
Okay, like as the corona has such plans, right? It's okay. It's okay that you had to put this on a hold. So once this one is a good field of research, but after once the corona is over, like you can start working on this one again and trying to measure the the nanoparticle properties and its antimicrobial properties, as you have said. So good luck with that. Okay, thank you.
thank you, sir.
Thank you, Aishwarya.
Thank you, ma'am.
Next presenter, CHPG007, Pragladan D. Pragladan, please.
Hello.
Please.
Hello, ma'am.
Yes.
It's audible.
Audible.
Okay. Ma'am, screen is visible.
Yes, it's coming.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Pragladan from Gobi Arts and Science College, Gobi Chettipalayam. I will just share my PG project, investigation of Terminal Arjuna bark extract, its antioxidant property, experimentally and theoretical validations. Just commonly introduction of my projects. I have taken the flavonoid compound. The flavonoid is science metabolic flavonoids. It's well-known cytoproductive property and anti-inflammatory activity and oxidative stress reduction actions. The flavonoids are mostly present in the foods, barks and seeds. Sometimes the humans are used with diet food like fruits, vegetables also. It's used for the chemotherapy purpose also. It's my present work in investigation of TPPH radical scavenging activity of the bark extract from well-known medical plant Terminalia arjuna, commonly referred to the Marudumaram in Tamil, guardians of heart. This is extremely explore the antioxidant role and also theoretically investigate the validate the two suitable compounds like arginone and arginolone. It's present in the extract the oxidative properties through the structural activity analysis. The so many flavonoids compounds are natural occurrent compound the bark, but these two flavonoids is not explained the antioxidant role. So I will explain the theoretically. In the first my experimental work, bark extract is prepared in the various solvent extract by using like methanol, ethanol, water, and chloroform and so on solvents. But the basic flavonoid test is successfully answered for only acetone and methanol extract. The antioxidant activity of the DPP radical scavenging activity is present. It's doing for methanol and acetone extract. I will take the sample A, the methanol extract, and sample B is acetone extract. I used the standard is ascorbic acid. So using the DPPH radical activity, I will get IC50 values, approximate value for sample A, that is methanol extract is taken 33, and sample B, that is acetone extract is taken 166. So from IC50 value to confirm antioxidant activity, B is very high compared to A. This is the methanol extract graph, DPP radical scavenging activity graph, and it's a acetone extract graph. The structural activity of the flavonoids is taking the 4 steps: molecular descriptor, electromolecular electrostatic potential. It's shortly called a MEP. Energy analysis property and molecular docking. It's the 4 steps are using that. It's a basic structure of the flavonoids. It's compound A and compound C part and it's a P part. I have used the Gaussian 16W software. It's taken the basic set. I will set the 6311G DP and using the functional is B3LYP. So I will get the two compound like arginone and arginolone. The energy is 1187.684746. It's arginone and minus 993.283678. It's arginolone. It's a basic structure of the optimist structures of arginone. The yellow color is denoted as the carbon and blue color is denoted as hydrogen. Oxygen is denoted as the red color. It's optimist structure for arginone. As we say, yellow color is denoted as carbon, blue color is denoted as hydrogen, and oxygen is denoted as the red color. I will take in the FMO property to arginolone compound. FMO is one of the application of molecular orbital theory. It's only based on the Hohmann-Lummo to explain the molecular molecular structures and properties to explain easily. In the LUMO is mostly present in the A, C, and B, three rings mostly present in them. But in the case of HOMO, the A and C part is mostly present in there. These two energy gaps value is 4.36936612 electron voltage. And the LUMO of arginine is mostly present in that AC rings only. And the HOMO is mostly present in the B parts of ring. Not A and C rings is present in that. The energy gap value is approximately 4.5 electron voltage get in. The molecular electrostatic potentials of arginine and arginine is present here. Here in this case, the blue color is the explain that the most election accepting sites denoted by blue colors, and green color is denoted as the neutral part of the compound, and also the red color is denoted as the election donating sites. So from this blue color to confirm the intensity of the colors of blue color is observed over alcohol group and OCH3 sites, election donating site for is host. So it's directly involved for the radical scavenging activity. In the cases, OH is highly radical scavenging activity involved compared to OCH3 parts. Hence, the arginine and arginine is nominated the antioxidant based on their electrostatic properties and the molecular destructive parameters like ionization potential energy, election affinity, hardness, softness, chemical hardness, softness, some properties to explain the antioxidant role. Some of the values are calculated by DFT software. I will show in that IP ionization potential value for arginine 6.04 and arginine 6.19. Election affinity value for arginine 1.50 and arginine is 1.82. And softness, the values softness value for 0.22 and the arginine is 0.22. The both are same. And chemical hardness eta for arginine is 3.11 and arginine is 3.67. And electronegativity, the value is arginine 3.77 and the arginine is 4.00. And chemical hardness value 3.13 and 3.67. From these values are calculated. Concluded my project work from this antioxidant activity of acetone and methanol extract of thermal arginine to confirm the acetone extract is taken the high antioxidant activity compared to methanol. To base it on the FOMO reports, the LUMO is mostly present in the A and C ring of arginine and HOMO mostly present in the B ring of the arginine. Also, the LUMO mostly spread in the A and B, C ring of the arginine, and HOMO is mostly present in the A and C ring of the arginine alone. To base it on the MIP surface diagram, the arginine and arginine to act as the election donor nature. So arginine and arginine is taken the antioxidant activity. To base it on the molecular descriptive values, the arginine and arginine molecule display the laser hardness and increases the smoothness. It facilitates the engage the structural activity in terms of election removal. The election attracting ability for the arginine is quite easier than the arginine, which is represented by the electronegativity values. The calculated molecular parameter clearly confirm the arginine and arginine prefer to act the electron donor rather than the electron acceptor. This is also indicator of the antioxidant capacity. Some reference. Thank you.
Okay, Prahlad, good evening. That's a nice work, has been done.
Thank you, sir.
How did you measure the the inhibition property or the you have shown some graphs in the beginning, right? So
Yes, sir. The graph, experimentally analysis the graph, sir.
sorry, I didn't hear it.
Experimentally, just, sir, one second.
Yeah,
This graph,
yeah, yes.
yes,
So
sir.
that shows the antioxidant property. So how did you measure this? What kind of experiment did you do to measure this one?
Sir, just I will experimentally the methanol extract used by the TPP radical scavenging activity, sir. Some ml different ratio, 10 ml, 20 ml, 30 ml is the ratio, sir.
Okay.
To reacting to the DPP radical and also standard for ascorbic acid standard, sir.
Okay. No, my question was, what kind of technique did you use? Like, is it some spectroscopy technique or something else?
UV spectrometer, sir.
Okay, you measure the absorption spectrum. Okay, good. That's what I was
Sir.
mentioning. Okay,
Okay, sir.
okay. And these are good electron donors, right? Both the compounds.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So, and one of them has got greater electron donating property compared to the other one, right?
Maximum electron donating property is very high, sir. These two
Okay,
compounds.
okay. But why do they show different inhibition properties in methanol and acetone? Methanol extract is better compared to acetone extract. So, what is the reason?
Sir, no, sir. Acetone property is very high and its
Sorry,
activity,
acetone
sir.
property is very high compared to methanol. So, what is the reason? I'm sorry.
Sir, IC50 value calculation, sir. Sir, this IC50 value calculation, I will get the answer, sir.
Okay, yeah. Explain, please.
Sir, IC50 value, the compound, the observant of DPP radical activity, the concentration of the sample required for 50% reduction in the intensity, sir. I will get the calculation, some proper calculation Excel, sir. I will get this value.
No, my question was, both are different solvents, right? So molecular
Yes, sir.
structure of acetone and methanol are different. Both are different solvents. So what does the
Yes.
solvent do?
So, sir, solvent is blankly is taken the very high value for methanol, sir.
Okay. No, my question was, what is the role of solvent in this antioxidant property?
Sir, I don't.
No, like what is my question was for these compounds in acetone and methanol, the acetone extract shows better activity compared to methanol extract. So my
Yes.
question is, what is the specific role of the solvent acetone and methanol in this antioxidant property or activity? How does the solvent influence the antioxidant activity? That was my question.
So just the acetone is not fully extract the bark extract. So some methanol is highly absorb the bark extract. So this compound is very most compounds are present in methanol, but acetone is not a high level compound condenser. So
Okay,
some
it's just the
compounds are
content of the compound. Okay, okay.
yes, sir. So experimental process were not fully completed, so I will take in the theoretical property. So I
Okay.
have taken small short time.
Okay, okay, sure. Yeah, still that's a good attempt. If you could
Yes,
validate the theoretical, conclusions from experimental method, that would be really nice. Okay,
thank you, sir.
okay, you could try doing some, pulse radiolysis studies or something like to, uh, you know, validate the
Yes, sir.
further antioxidant properties. Okay, thank you.
Uh, thank you, sir.
Thank you, Pragladan.
Thank you, ma'am.
Next presenter, CHPG 008, Aishwarya Satyan. 008.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Can you see the? No, Aishwarya, no. It is not visible.
Is it visible now, ma'am?
Yes, yes.
Yeah,
Okay. So, good evening to all. Myself, Aishwarya Satya. I'm pursuing MSc Nanoscience and Technology from Mount Carmel College. I was working on a project entitled Nanostructured Edible Coatings for Fruits and Vegetables containing hybrid system of polymer and lipid. So, my aim was to develop a nanostructured edible coating for fruits and vegetables to improve their shelf life. As we all know, India is the second largest producer of fruits and vegetables. But due to the lack of post-harvest technologies, 20 to 30% of this produced fruits and vegetables are getting lost. Here comes the nanotechnology application in fruit processing. So nano coating are of two types. We can add nanoparticle and also there is nano emulsion coating. What is edible packaging? So you can see my title, that is edible nano packaging. So edible nano packaging means it is a packaging on the outer covering of outer surface of the fruits or vegetable and which can be an integral part of the food we can eat like a whole food product. Example, if you go to a market and you bought an apple or a banana and you don't, nowadays they are coated with wax, so we have to wash twice or thrice, right? So after this edible packaging, you if you bought an apple from the market, you can eat directly. So it won't be harmful effect on the human body. So we have to know what all function this nano coating has. So basically, it has a natural layer to prevent the moisture loss. It selectively allows the exchange of O2 and CO2, which helps to the control of enzyme activities. It also prevents the loss of important components like vitamins and minerals. If we buy an apple and we are eating, if after the nano coating, if it doesn't have a if it doesn't have the vitamins or minerals, there is no point of taking the apple by coated with nano coating, right? So this nano coating has a function to prevent the loss of important components like vitamins and minerals. Also, we can add extra properties like antimicrobial, antioxidant, anti-browning agents. So in the synthesis part, I did the double emulsion solvent evaporation technique. So I took all the materials which is not harmful and which we use daily life. So first of all, I took the pumpkin skin, polyethylene glycol, oleic acid, starch, coconut shell charcoal powder, which is dissolved in tender coconut water. In the synthesis step, I took the PEG solution and mixed the pumpkin extract, and then I added the coconut shell charcoal powder, which is dissolved in the tender coconut water. And I kept for stirring for about 1 hour. I used a mechanical stirrer at an RPM of 1500. And to the solution, I added sunflower oil dropwise and then I again stir it for 1 hour. And then the final stage, I added the oleic acid and also the starch solution and I kept the whole solution for stirring 2 to 3 hours. And then the final step, I got the solution which is shown in the right side of the screen. This is the image showing the pumpkin extraction. This was the experimental setup. So I used a mechanical stirrer for stirring the solutions to get a homogeneous mixture solution. And I kept all the solution at a temperature of 55 degrees Celsius. So this final sample, which I got from my synthesis, I gave it for characterization. So I took the morphological analysis, M image. So here you can see the quasi-spherical structures which have a size of 50 nanometer. And you can see the darkened portion which shows the right encapsulation. There is no breakage in the outer wall also. That's why it has have a quasi-spherical structure. If it have a breakage in the outer surface, the encapsulation is not happen. So in this TEM image, we can see it have the right encapsulation also. And I took the FTR analysis, check whether the components are present in the hybrid system. So I took the materials which is present in the solution like charcoal, starch, PEG, and I took the FTR analysis of hybrid system also. So all the corresponds peaks was present in the materials and in the final solution. So I took the solution for coating on the fruits and vegetables. I did the dip coating technique. Here you can see the coated vegetable and fruits by using dip coating method. So from the day 1 to day 20, I took the weight loss analysis. Here you can see the control. The test is the coated one and the control is the uncoated one. So the coated one have more days, and also it stayed for more days, and also it have less weight loss also. And I took the pictures after 6 days, after 10 to 12 days, and this image is showing the rotting of the uncoated fruits and vegetables. So when it comes to 20 to 22 days, the uncoated vegetable and fruit was rotten. So I took the cytotoxicity analysis to check whether it is harmful for our human body. So I took the human fibroblast, and then I added in different concentration, 50 microliter, 100 microliter, and 200 microliter to the human fibroblast cells, and then check the viability of the cells. So I got 80 to 85% of the cell viability from this analysis. Also, I did the antibacterial studies by using agar disc diffusion method, and I got 11 millimeter of zone of inhibition. So from my experiment, I got to know this edible nano coating can replace the wax coating, and also this is biocompatible, non-toxic, and it has the antibacterial property. And the TEM image was having a quasi-spherical structure without any damage in the outer covering, and it has the right encapsulation also. And this nano solution does have the novelty because most of the research is happening in polysaccharide nano coating. There is no more research is going on this hybrid system nano coating. So I have to do my future work in antibacterial studies on Staphylococcus bacteria, blood compatibility studies, coating thickness analysis, toxicity comparison between wax and nanostructured edible coating. I have also participated in the poster presentation at Bangalore India Nano Conference, and also oral presentation at Weekend 2020 International Virtual Conference by the Vellore Institute of Technology. Here my reference. Thank you.
Thank you, Satyan.
Yes, sir.
That is good work that you have done,
Thank you, sir.
and it's relevant too. Like we don't know what we have, what we are eating when we buy stuff on the market, right? So
Yes.
that's really good, relevant. And I have a couple of few basic questions, like
Okay, sir.
about your choice of materials you have taken. Okay, I'm quite
sir.
convinced about the pumpkin part, but why did you choose PEG, polyethylene glycol? What about the the biocompatibility of PEG? Like, is it of food quality? Is it a food quality material or?
Okay, sir. So PEG wire used as to in emulsion. It helps to stabilize the emulsion. Okay, and then it is also used in drugs, cosmetics, and it was also used in the food industry. So it doesn't have any harmful effect like when it comes to in our body.
Okay, it doesn't get retained on the body. Is it
Yes.
what you're saying? Okay, okay.
Yes.
Okay, and what about the coconut shell charcoal powder? What is
Okay.
this for?
Yes. So this in olden times, this coconut shell charcoal powder is used for in when we have wound and all. They used to put the charcoal powder on the wound, and it acts as an antibacterial agent. So it also like universally it has called as this universal antidote, and in medical application this coconut shell charcoal powder is used also, sir.
Okay, so did you have that in your mind when you started making this hybrid material?
Sorry,
Did you
sir.
have that objective? Did you have that objective of using this one as an antimicrobial
Yes, sir. Yes,
mixture?
sir.
Okay,
Yes,
you
sir.
did. Okay, so that's you had plans, good plans
Yes.
before start doing the work. Okay, good. Good. Okay, and did you try eating these materials yourself?
No, sir. No, sir. I didn't complete my project. I want to do the
Okay, you wanted to do further stuff. I have seen that one, so that's also good
Yes,
plan.
sir.
Okay, okay. So and you're going to eat that one after your future works.
Yes, sir. We all can eat, sir. Not
Okay.
only me.
Okay, good. So there is a good prospects, right?
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Okay, okay, good. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Aishwarya.
Thank you, ma'am.